Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Roast here with Jessica Bun Bun. This is our Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 12 reaction and review. Guys, we're upset. There's no reason to tiptoe around it. We have been upset from the moment we first saw the first half of this episode, and for some reason, totally unbeknownst to us, Colby had to be killed off.
Yes, this was a completely and totally unnecessary death. It didn't make any sense. I didn't know why this was happening. If they were just trying to set up some sort of a story for Carter, like they did not need to do this whatsoever. There's already been a death this season, a major one. They
Yeah,
didn't need to have this happen. The way that it happened as well was really irritating. I mean, we're going to drag this. Like, I'm
yeah.
not going to sugarcoat it. This was bad. And while there's been a lot of stuff that I have liked about the second half of season 5 of Yellowstone, there have been some creative choices that just don't make any sense to me. This is one of them.
Okay, I'm just gonna put the tinfoil hat on early in this video because I have a theory as to why this happened. And it is ridiculous, but this is a ridiculous world, and a producer in Taylor Sheridan that occasionally does ridiculous things see at least 30% of Landman. So, okay, here we go. I kind of feel like Yellowstone has glamorized a lot the cowboy lifestyle, and at times to
No.
Taylor's financial benefit. I mean, I have seen advertisements for 4 6's ranch cooking seasonings, among other things. But I think at the same time, this kind of brought him onto his lectern like he is a professor, and he wanted to deliver a speech of, by the way, guys, this is still really dangerous work. We may glamorize all of it, but something bad can go wrong at any given moment. And it's like, dude, we know there's a reason why Jess and I are not out there wrangling cattle. We are aware.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, I don't have any experience with this type of lifestyle. And even if I wasn't watching Yellowstone, I already know that working with wild horses and trying to tame them, working with cattle, I mean, there is a danger that comes with that. I don't think that that's lost on anybody. And we've seen a lot of death on this show already. They have shown us, for anyone who might not have known, that this is not a safe job.
Yeah.
This just felt, yeah, it felt completely unnecessary. It felt like maybe they were trying to give Carter some sort of a story. And we'll talk about that too. That whole like, oh my goodness, it's my fault. No, it's not your fault. You were only told not to go in there, but then you went in there, and then Colby had to go in there, and now Colby is dead, but it is not your fault at all. Don't even worry about it. Nonsense.
Okay, before we get into that, hit that subscribe button because I know there's only a couple of episodes here left for Yellowstone this season, but it seems like there's going to potentially be more, or however they're going to call it. There is a spin-off already greenlit called The Madison that we don't know a lot about story-wise, but hit that subscribe button so you guys don't miss any other coverage that's coming up. And by the way, now that we're in December,
Mhm.
you guys should be well aware that Dexter Original Sin,
Mhm.
the new prequel, is coming to Showtime in just under a couple of weeks. We are going to have big, extensive coverage of that. We are huge Dexter people. And just so you guys know, this prequel may end up being a little bit more essential to the larger story than you would think on the surface.
Yeah, it was interesting to see the trailer that they released pretty recently for
Yeah,
it, and it's got a little bit of how Dexter New Blood ended in it. They gave away quite a bit. It was
yeah.
I mean, I think we all kind of knew it was coming anyways, because there's also Dexter Resurrection is coming, where he is back from the dead. So we also are covering Dune Prophecy over at our Patreon, and we'll leave a link for you below if you want to check that out. It's the only place that you can get
Mhm.
our Dune coverage. Thank you so much to everyone who has.
Thank you guys so much. Now, just real quickly, I have to ask this. After the reaction to this episode, is Taylor going to greenlight a new spinoff titled Colby: Resurrection that's going to be coming out next year?
Listen, when they had that whole Colby tells Teeter he loves her by accident. It just slips out. And
Yeah.
she's like, oh, I love you too. I was like, oh no. Are they setting something up? They had been setting up that this particular horse was really wild. They didn't really know what to do with it for a little couple episodes now. It's like, okay, they've been spending a lot of time on this horse. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden we have the I love yous. This is not a lovey-dovey show. So I felt like something might be coming. I didn't think he was going to get killed, but I thought maybe he might get hurt or something along those lines. Killed? It felt so unnecessary. We just had a huge death that we're still investigating. Colby felt like a distraction, almost like we know we don't have Kevin Costner. Look over here, we're killing Colby. Look over here, we're doing this. That they're trying to make it that it's like this is still a really big and exciting show. But this just seemed to really piss off most of the audience. Nobody wanted to see Colby get killed. And I don't know, you guys let me know, is there anybody that wanted to see Carter get like a straight pass? I understand
Mhm.
that it wasn't on purpose, it wasn't intentional, and that there's going to be part of it that Rip and Beth and everyone are going to try to help this kid get through it. But at the same time, this is the cowboy life, and there has to be some sort of self-reflection of consequences. You are told not to do something by more experienced people than you, more experienced cowboys than you. They have told you, do not enter this pen under any circumstances. Oh, I see that there's a tip bucket of water. I better go get Colby or Rip or anybody. All he was told was not to go in by himself. There's cowboys all over the place. He couldn't have grabbed anybody from the bunkhouse. No, I'm just going to go in there anyways and put other people in danger, put myself in danger when you've been told not to.
This is a really bizarre situation to me in a lot of different ways, just because we've seen Rip come down really hard on a lot of other people
Right.
over the years and doesn't really come down that hard on Carter. And yeah, I understand that he has to live with the idea that what he did caused Colby to die, and that's a consequence. But it's also, this is a working ranch, and you guys did just lose one of your best people who work at the ranch. And I think that's one of the greater reasons why there's so much upset over this, is just that you guys could have killed off anybody in the bunkhouse if you really wanted to. But if I'm doing like a power ranking in my head of like the most popular non-Rip bunkhouse people, is Colby number one or is he number two? He's definitely in the top two for a lot of people, and having Carter not really get that much blowback for it, I'm just going to go ahead and say this. Taylor Sheridan does not know how to write teenagers. And this
we're
is...
going to talk about Tate as well,
Yeah.
who is the worst character on this show currently.
Yeah, you've got the Tate problem. You've got the Carter problem. If you want to go to other shows in the Taylor Sheridan universe, not naming names, but he does not know how to write teenagers. He has them being rebellious. He has them talking back to their parents in really uncomfortable ways. He has Carter making a huge mistake. And if Carter was an adult, like a full-fledged adult, he was 25, he does this thing, he's either going to the train station or he's looking for another job.
He absolutely is. There would be no, it'll be all right, don't beat yourself up about it. I felt like especially Rip would have had a more balanced response to it, where he would have been like, okay, you're going to end up carrying this with you for the rest of your life, and I understand that that's a consequence. We're going to help you through it, but understand this is the consequence of what you did by not listening to people who are more experienced than you. It has cost somebody their life. Where was that talk, Rip?
It was just disappointing. Like everything around this story was disappointing. It didn't need to be there. I don't get the sense that Denham Richards, who plays Colby, was off doing some other job and had to be written out of the show for X, Y, and Z. It just felt like either you were trying to lecture the viewers or you just felt like you needed to give the bunkhouse people some other sort of drama. But just, why you guys got to break Teeter? Because this is the thing. I love Colby. I love Teeter. They were two of my favorite characters. Teeter has already gone through so much. She's constantly made fun of because of her accent. She's, a woman working in a male dominated field. This is not an easy life for her. And now you guys have made it worse.
Well, I think you hit it on the head at the beginning of this video, which is that this whole thing feels like it was laid out to show the audience what a struggle it is to be a cowboy and how dangerous this life is, and that there is suffering. I mean, Teeter said it all there. If you're a cowboy, there's suffering. I wish he could have just suffered a little bit longer so I could say goodbye. It was so sad. And then
Yeah.
you've got Rip is really struggling with Colby's death because he's just like, man, I know one day death is going to come for me for this job as well. And it felt like there was a lot of focus on that with this death, that it's everybody there is at risk, which is something they've already shown us many times over the years. We know it's dangerous.
Yeah, and I don't even think they have to tell us that it's dangerous for us to know. Like, I grew up and I had like a couple of years where I was around horses semi regularly. Like, my grandmother had a couple of horses that she helped to train and all this other stuff. So I've seen horses front and center. I'm like, those things are big. Like, even when you're a kid, an adult, horses are big. They are strong. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty inherently clear that the danger is there. So I just think we didn't need to focus all this time on this as a storyline when there was another just really compelling story sitting right here for the entire bunkhouse. And it goes just as simply as, we don't know what's going to happen to the ranch. Like, that's
Yes.
still lingering out there. And there's an interesting question of, okay, if rainwater or market equities or somebody ends up taking the ranch, what happens to these people? Do you just all migrate over to some other ranch? What if there's not openings? Like, what does a cowboy do when there's no place left to cowboy? That's interesting enough.
Way interesting enough. It's interesting hearing them have those conversations of like, oh, well, there's ranches here. I'll have to look here. Should I be looking? I don't even know. Nobody knows what's happening. Rip is trying to do the best he can. He's like, okay, we got to sell these horses. We got to sell this cattle because we're not selling the land. And if, we're going to pay this gigantic inheritance tax, then we need to sell off everything else we possibly can to get to where we can be, where we can keep the land.
Yeah, it's like all this stuff is just really fascinating on its own, and it gives you a chance to dive into a different aspect of these people where you're taking away something from them that they really love. And the closest thing we've come to this is that storyline with Jimmy earlier on in the show's run, where he was very much into the rodeo, but then he realized that health-wise he couldn't keep doing it, but he found a way to move forward in a different way down in Texas. And that was a really good story. And you don't have to do the exact same thing with some of the people at the Yellowstone and around it, but you can find other interesting sort of ways to articulate this.
It's interesting with this season because it feels like Taylor Sheridan has set up some stories and then just kind of let them either fizzle out or get overpowered by things that aren't good stories, like Tate. Let's talk about Tate, who is the most unlikable teenager I've seen on TV in a good while. The way that he speaks to his parents,
Yeah.
especially his mom, man, if I ever spoke to my mom like that, was like, time of the month, your cooking sucks. If I just on and on was talking to my mom like that, my dad and mom don't even like each other. And my dad would just shoot me into the sun if I ever spoke to my mom that way. And it's really shocking to see that Monica says nothing, Casey says nothing. They just allow this kid to talk like this to her more specifically than anybody else. Very surprising to see Casey let that go down at all. You've got two more soft-spoken parents and a kid that's so disrespectful. Could he not have been the one in the stall? Like, could he not have been the one in the stall? Give him that story. But they had set him up with a
Yeah.
really good potential story where he was talking last episode with his dad about the idea of like, well, what do you want to do? I want to be a fly fishing guide, but I know that's not a job. Well, do you want to run the ranch? I don't know. It's really dangerous, something to consider. I was like, oh man, they're setting up a really good story for this kid. And then it's like straight back to, oh, why don't you cook like this at home? It's like, guy, why are you so rude to your mom? I know teenagers are rude, but typically parents correct that behavior so that they don't turn into rude adults.
Well, yeah, I think there's just another interesting story that could have been born out of this, which is the simple question of, okay, why is Tate acting like this? Is he just typical rebellious teenager? Okay, that's boring. Like, is there a different underlying reason? Can we get to the bottom of this? Can we try to solve this? I mean, yeah, you want to make sure there's proper punishment, but you also want to dive deeper because this is not who Tate has been for the entirety of
No.
the show. And so doing this now and then not really answering it or resolving it and almost just sort of excusing it away, it's so unbelievably frustrating. And this is the frustrating part of this show, where you have the Colby thing, which is just incomprehensible. You have the Tate thing, which is just annoying. And then you have Casey and Grant in the car at the end of it. And for like those 10 minutes, I am seated, I am buckled in, I am just like, this is freaking lit. Give me all of this. How is all of this the same show?
How is this all the same man?
Yeah.
So you have Casey, who is somebody who is more in tune with himself, more in tune with the ranch. He doesn't know everything. And he has said, I've always never really known what I want to do. But there is a lot about himself that he has learned over the past few seasons where he is more in tune with who he is. He is more of a guy that's less jumping in a car and waving a gun around and
Yeah.
being like that, where he is more of a guy who takes action in other ways, and he does use his words more than his, push. That's why I've always been like, this whole season, where is that parenting
Yeah.
on Tate then? If you are willing to jump in a car with a young girl who's about the same age as Tate, but at home you're not even going to be like, maybe don't talk to your mom like that. I'm not all right with it.
Yeah. It's just really bizarre, and it's really, really inconsistent. And I just don't buy the, oh, Tate has other things on his mind excuse, because it's like, this is his home. This is where his attention would be. I mean, yeah, he is going through a lot, but you can still correct your kid. Like, that doesn't take that much time.
The other thing I found really strange about the Casey in the car scene with Grant, where he was just like, hey, I know where you live. I know your
Yeah.
name. I know your family. I know where your mama lives. I will come and take out everybody. I'm like, okay, that's fine. That makes
Yeah.
sense. He's going to be like that. Why didn't he ask for confirmation that Sarah or Jamie were involved with the hit? Why was there no questions about that at all? He didn't ask at all.
It's a good question.
You've got Grant, the person who put this all together, and you're not going to be like, by the way, was it my brother?
Did he? I'm just trying to think this through, like, on the fly, because I hadn't really thought about this. Is it a situation where he just maybe thought they would not tell him the truth, or did he not care? Was he so emotionally charged in the moment?
I just feel like Taylor Sheridan didn't want him to get confirmation that Jamie's behind it, because once he does and he gets absolute confirmation on that, then the show is over. The season is done, right? He's just going to go over to Jamie's house and take him to the train station. And, there's a big investigation that's going on right now with all that. He feels confident that it's happening. Even with the detectives, he was like, yeah, all gas, no brakes on Jamie, no problem. Like, I think he did it, sort of thing. But why not then just give him the confirmation that this is actually what happened? There's not that many episodes left. I don't know why that's not the first and only question he's asking.
Yeah.
Who did this?
It could have cleared a couple of things up. Like, let's make this very, very clear. Like, Jamie, he's not an innocent in a lot of this, but at the same time, he
No.
did not want his dad to be taken out in this way. He was just having a conversation, and everything spiraled out of control to get to this point. I mean, the thing with the whole Casey scene is, yes, it was unbelievably entertaining. I am going to give the show all of its applause for that. Is it also extremely problematic for Casey moving forward? 1,000,000%, because this is a particularly reckless thing to do, going at a guy and thinking, I'm going to get leverage on him because I have his daughter in danger in this car, when this guy clearly has a lot of other people who work under him, clearly has a team, clearly has an ego. Like, isn't he gonna want some sort of vengeance for this? Like, this is a huge risk to take, dude.
Well, yeah, especially since he does have people that he has to answer to. Like, he's already been part of the cleanup team, cleaning up Sarah, getting rid of all the loose ends and all the problems. It's just like, okay, well, then now there's this loose end.
Yeah, this all brings me to this unfortunate idea I've been dangling with for a while, that is Casey is gonna die before the show is over. And it's just like, okay, here we go. Yellowstone killing another character. But this is the thing. We've seen countless stories of Kelly Reilly and Cole Hauser, Beth and Rip supposedly being in talks for a season 6, a
Mhm.
spinoff, whatever it is you want to call it. I haven't seen anything saying Luke Grimes is for sure in talks. Like, I've heard him say in interviews kind of like, oh, that would be an interesting thing to do. But it's like, okay, if you're dead, you probably are not going to be able to do it. It just feels like there might be a way for the ranch to maybe move forward, or for there to be a little bit of justice. But it kind of feels like it's going to come about because Grant or somebody on his team is going to take out Casey, but with that, everybody else is going to get confirmation on what happened. So there's going to be justice, but it's going to come at a really extreme cost.
Yeah, and for this to just be like the second half of season 5, you're gonna kill John Dutton, which is, obviously the star of the show. And
Yeah.
then you're going to kill Colby, who's somebody that everybody in the fandom loves. And then maybe also kill Casey, who is another person the fandom really loves. Like, these two men, Colby and Casey, are men that are strong men,
Yeah.
but they're also men that have a softer side to them, which is something that you don't typically get to see in any kind of like cowboy western type show or movie, where it's like, yeah, there's lots of different cowboys, including the Colbys and the Caseys. So we're going to just kill them both off. I really hope that Casey's not going to go.
I hope he doesn't gonna go. I hope he stays. I'm just really worried about this notion that if Casey ended up living and running the ranch, is he almost in a way too competent to be able to justify any more of the story? Because he's not volatile. He's not gonna cause drama in the way
Right.
that Beth or Rip would potentially.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that Casey's probably the person that would get the ranch, and it wouldn't be Beth and Rip. And Beth and Rip are way more interesting to watch. That's why I keep saying, Jamie's my favorite character to watch on the show. Not because he's likable, and
Yeah.
it's because he is a weasel and he is a coward, but he's bringing a really rich story throughout every single season. He's the guy I love to hate, sort of thing. And while I like Casey as sort of this character and as a person, he is the least entertaining person on the show for me, because he is a good guy and in a loving relationship, and everything is great, and they're fixing up their cabin and putting up the roof. I'm just like, I can't watch an hour of putting up the roof. Like, it's not enough.
See, Casey's easily the person I would most want to, I don't know, go grab a drink with or something like that. He seems like he would be a great friend. I don't necessarily need to see Casey be a lead of the show, and that is sort of the big fundamental dilemma that exists. But I got to ask you a question here, because Sarah gets killed at the end of not, yesterday's episode, but the one before, and it really was this big dramatic reveal. Nobody really seemed to care that much in this episode. Like, where's the investigation into this? It happened in broad daylight. It seems like it was at a place where a lot of people potentially were.
Yeah, I mean, they on the news, it was like, oh, it was like just a random whatever that just happened. And we did see the detectives kind of looking into it, where they came to Jamie and were like, oh, can we get Sarah's bag? No, you can't. Okay, cool. We'll be back with a warrant and reporters or whatever. And we see him up there shredding documents and all that, trying to hide, because he's like, yeah, we had a personal relationship, but we didn't have anything else, because that'll be jail time. So we've got Jamie in a panic, as he typically is on the show. But now we also have the detectives talking to Casey, where he's just like, listen, I'm giving you a heads up, Casey. Like, we are looking at your brother now. he was acting a fool. Now we're looking at him like, what do you want us to do? Because we know that you just had the death of your father. Things are chaotic over there. I was like, wow, these are very nice detectives to be like, hey, do you want us to put on the brakes a little bit? Or
Yeah.
what would you like us to do? We're only looking at murder right now, but we want your comfort, Casey. I was like, can I get that detective service? Oh my God. And Casey's like, yeah, okay, all gas, no brakes on Jamie.
It just feels like this whole investigation here is just so half-hearted. I mean, I understand.
Yeah.
Sarah is not exactly the most likable person in the world here. She's not somebody who I think a lot of people are upset is gone, but she still got killed in broad daylight on the street. It is just such a dramatic, crazy thing. The way that the show is handling that is a little bit weird, but in general, I think the biggest weakness this season has is just this idea that it's only 6 episodes, the second part of it, and it just feels like there's a lot of stuff that needed a little bit more time to percolate and develop, and that's why, what happened to Colby comes so far out of left field. It's why you're gonna have to rush all these other
Yes.
investigations now.
Yeah, there's enough story going on that you guys didn't need to take this episode and use so much of it to kill off a character that
Yeah.
nobody wanted to see go, that didn't add to the story in the way that it needs to. This is still more about cowboy life and how dangerous it is, something that this show has already told us, and we know that it is dangerous. But there is this huge, like, hanging fruit here that is the death of John Dutton, and
Yeah.
trying to figure out who did it, who's behind it. Can they get some sort of revenge about it? I mean, Casey telling Beth about it, like, oh, but the Sarah connection, and the wagons are circling Jamie, and the threat of the idea that if Jamie goes to jail, he gets brought in, he is going to spill secrets. He is telling everybody's secrets, and she knows it, and so does Casey. And this is such a huge plot, and it's so juicy. It's like, why did you kill Colby?
Yeah.
Why? For why?
That's just what you just lined up. That is the storyline I think everybody really wants to see here. To use the mixed Western metaphors, I guess, that is the showdown at the OK Corral that we're all kind of inevitably waiting for. I think just the big interesting thing towards the end of this season, which for those of you who don't know, the end of season 5, even if it's not the actual end of the show, this is apparently the ending that Taylor always had in mind for the show. So in that way, you really can view it as an ending. Most of his shows haven't had an ending because, you look at the Yellowstone prequels like 1883, like they're always building towards the main show, but a lot of his other things that are out there, Linus hasn't ended, Mayor of Kingstown, I know he's not the showrunner there. We don't know how Taylor actually ends a show, and that's my point here. This could be really, really bad. It could be really, really entertaining. We are all just riding into the wilderness.
As long as it's not Tate running the ranch, that'll be fine.
Oh no. Okay, if Tate ends up running the ranch, there will be no season 6. You might as well just pull the Madison off before it even comes on the air.
I have not disliked a character so much in a long time. A character that I was more indifferent on before he came back as a teenager. Like, I know there was a huge wait, and he was a kid the last time we saw him, and now all of a sudden he's a teenager because they didn't decide to recast him for no reason. Like, I understand they want to probably keep the actor, but if you have a 6-week timeline, then he didn't go from being a little kid to being a teenager. But it is one of the quickest turnarounds I've had on disliking or liking a character to go to disliking. It's the same thing that just happened to me on Silo. For those of you watching Silo with Meadows, I did not like her at all in the first season, and now I'm like, oh my God, I am Team Meadows all the way.
This is there needs to be specific names for this. I guess the take can be when you go from liking a character.
Yeah, to being like, I just can't stand this kid.
Well, we'll see what exactly happens over these final episodes of this season. But thank you guys for being along for the ride with us. Of course, let us know how you're feeling and coping with the loss of Colby in the comments. And hit that subscribe button so you guys don't miss any other coverage. Support us further. Join our Patreon, exclusive coverage of Doom Prophecy there. Thank you so much. We'll see you here next time.